Hello, my name's Mary Dhonau and I'm going to talk to you about what it's like to flood, both from my story and stories of the many people I've talked to who've been flooded, and also how we can plan, prepare and mitigate against it at a home property level. And then after that, I'm going to do some really positive case studies of people who've adapted their homes to make them resilient to future floods. So I live in Worcester, which is well known for flooding. You'll see them regularly on the TV every time there's a big flood along the River Severn. We regularly have swans swimming in the street, and our well-known county cricket club and the racing course, the race course, regularly gets flooded. So it's something that we are very aware of in Worcester. My story was something different. When I moved into my home over 20 years ago, there was no river, no sea, no ditch, nothing obvious to tell me that I was at risk of flooding, and it certainly didn't come up on the house searches in those days. It's now a well-known area of flood risk. But every time it rained hard, the drains would surcharge. In the year 2000, that's the same view as the one you saw just now. It looked quite beautiful actually. It had swans swimming on it, but lurking underneath was filthy, stenching sewage. All the contents that you can imagine that come out of a drain was on the road and subsequently into my home. The first time I was flooded, my son called upstairs to me. He had a downstairs bedroom. We were doing our house up and he had a downstairs bedroom at the time, and said that his bedroom was full of flood water and that it stank. You can see the knock-on effect. We were displaced for 9 months, lost so many of our treasured possessions, all the little playgroup pictures, all the little handprints, photographs and everything that I held dear. My memories were effectively washed away. And being flooded can have far-reaching and long-term impacts. In 2007, over 55,000 homes and businesses were flooded, and some people were out of their home for up to 2 years. And these photographs have been given to me with people that I have talked to and supported over the years. And I've got to tell you, you've got to remember that they're people's homes, places where we feel safe, somewhere we go to at the end of the day after we've come in from work, our sanctuary, somewhere we can feel safe. And when that is taken away from you, the sort of core stability of your life is removed, and the knock-on effect to your mental health is really quite significant. And floods do have the capacity to take out whole communities. Shops and homes and businesses and schools and churches and church halls. And when the core is knocked out of the community, it's a long road, a very long road to recovery. I'm going to show you some photographs, quite a lot of photographs of what it's like to flood, but I want you to imagine this was your home, this was you, this was your belongings. How would you feel if this was your home? So look at this lovely piano, our family heirloom, lost to the floodwater. And how would you imagine, how would you feel if this was your kitchen, especially as you've just saved up hard and had it installed? And the night before, these were just normal homes. Try and remember the green kitchen if you can, because there's a slightly more positive story towards the end of my presentation. And having to deal with this is really soul destroying. I waded to see this friend of mine in Upton-upon-Severn, and the first thing he did was just burst into tears on me, because you've just lost so much, and having to clear this up is just awful. You can see the colour of the flood water. When the flood has gone, the thick mud, the stench, it's slippy, it's just soul destroying, and you don't know where to start to clear it up. And then try and imagine, if you can, for one moment, what it's like being rescued. It often is in the middle of the night and you're having to climb out, sometimes from an upstairs window, into a boat that was your road. Your road is suddenly covered in very, very deep floodwater, and your only way out is via a boat. And then at the same time, the people that are rescuing you are putting themselves at risk to take you to a place of safety. And these may be familiar scenes. We see them a lot on TV, but they are the contents of people's rooms, people's homes, everything that we hold dear, everything that we've saved up for. And how would you like to live here for a year or more? Not necessarily up there, but this was a caravan of a friend of mine being delivered. She lived in there for 2 years. It was often below freezing. I had breakfast with her when it was -2. She'd got bubble wrap up at her caravan windows. She slept in sort of a spacesuit type sleeping bag. I just don't know how she stayed sane. Actually, she probably didn't, knowing what she's like now. And when the minister and the media and all the initial sort of excitement that goes with being flooded, when the community draws together to support each other, when the minister and the media have gone and all the interest has died down, this is the harsh reality that we have to face. Our homes become business building sites. We have to project manage that building site, which is our home, and at the same time as trying to lead a normal life, going to work, taking the children to school, perhaps living out of the area and having to drive in, project managing that building site when you're trying to hold down a job. It can all be very, very stressful. And then after the flood, what often happens is that the cowboy builder comes out, the shark knocking on people's doors, offering to fix your home for cheap, for cash, all these things that you have to deal with. Luckily, I hope the new code of practice that's recently been launched will put an end to that, but always be aware of unscrupulous builders, etc., knocking on your door, offering to fix you for cheap. What are the stressful things that we go through on a daily basis? Sort of death, divorce, illness, coronavirus, redundancy, retirement, money problems. Well, when you've been flooded, this is all compounded. As I've said, your home becomes a building site and you wonder how soon your home is going to be put together. And where are the builders today? They just haven't turned up. Extra financial burdens. And what is flood resilience? And I'll be back home soon, surely, won't I? There's so many things. Lack of information, poor living conditions, lack of control. That's something that we struggle with. Upset children, arguing with your spouse or your partner, and unrealistic expectations. There's so much more that we have to deal with when we've been flooded. So what can we do to reduce the awful impact a flood can have? Well, the first and most important thing is for you to know your flood risk. Find out if you're in an area of flooding, and then sign up for a free Environment Agency flood warning. It's a no-brainer not to. When you get a flood alert, you've got to stay alert and be vigilant and take early precautions, such as moving your car out of the flood risk area, because if you've got a flooded car and a flooded home, it can bring you to your knees. But do sign up for flood warnings and really plan in advance what you're going to do. have a flood plan. I had one and it made all the difference in the world, because when you get a flood warning, your heart does go into sort of high volume pumping and your mind starts whirring. But having something written down as to where things are, where your plastic boxes are that you can put the contents of your kitchen in, where you're going to send your children, where you're going to put things in what order, it will make such a big difference. So do think about that. If you don't have a flood warning, it is possible to get a community-based telemetry system that can ring individuals at risk up and alert the parish council, and you can all then start putting your home and community emergency plans into practice. There are lots of different kinds of telemetry systems about. You can hold fundraising activities at a community level to save up and buy one. Some of them cost about the £3,000 mark, and it's money well spent. In my book, there's no one fix for flooding. Flood risk management is a jigsaw puzzle of many pieces, and I make no apologies for constantly concentrating on the residual risk, the bit in the middle, our homes and our businesses that are flooded. In an urban environment, we've all paved over our drives, and so when the water does come down from the sky in huge volumes, there's very often little space for it to go. So think about, if you're thinking about paving a new drive, think about permeable paving, which will help the water percolate into the ground and not pool and build up and eventually go up into our homes. If we all did this, it would make a huge difference. One of my passions, and I'm going to have this written on my tombstone, I've told my children, is to ban the sandbag. I just wish we wouldn't be so dependent on the sandbag, the comfort blanket. There's an excellent example here of them not working. This huge pile of sandbags, the photograph was sent to me in Somerset, where they were all shrieking during the floods there for sandbags. They now hate them with a vengeance. And I was told that huge pile of stinking, rotten sandbags smelt like fish, and people gagged as they walked past them. They knew they didn't work. And they also are incredibly contaminated and environmentally unfriendly, as they can't be reused like so many of the other products that are available right now. And there's a sandbag wall. Just give you a few facts and figures here. A sandbag wall like this costs £231 a metre and has to be disposed of. And some temporary defences can cost as little as £205 a metre and can be washed down and used again. So to me, it's a no-brainer. These are just a few examples of property level resilience products working, and this is a home that was had it in place and didn't flood. The picture isn't particularly brilliant, but the middle one on the right hand side has got a pair of dry red feet on the other side of the barrier. Many homes hadn't taken such moves all around this house, and after the flood they knocked on the door to find out what they'd done, because all of their neighbours had to move out yet again for another length of time while their home recovered from the flood. So, and these people didn't have to. As another example of a flood guard on the Thames in January 2014, do look for a kite mark, because we know then that they've been tested to high and robust government standards, and you know you're paying for something that will give you time. At least it will, in a lesser flood, certainly hold the water out. In a deep flood, it may be overtopped, but it will give you time to move your stuff. Some kite mark products are allowed a certain amount of leakage, so I always advise people to think of it, to be aware of that, and perhaps put something like these absorbent flood sacks behind them to absorb any water, or indeed install a pump that will take a puddle sucker will take flood water down to a very low level. So putting those together will be your toolkit to reduce the risk of flooding to your home. There are lots of attractive looking flood doors on the market now. They are tested to 0.6 of a metre. They can't keep water out any higher than that because it will compromise the structural integrity of your home. But they don't flag up your home at being at risk of flooding. They're very attractive, and once they're locked, they will keep the water out. And it's a very worthwhile investment. Of course, an awful lot of water will get into your home via the airbricks. So fitting airbrick covers, you can get a lot of different kinds. Ones that you clip on, ones that you put screw in, one that you can just one use only that you can get from Amazon or other online outlets. My preferred choice, mostly because we tend to get flood warnings in the middle of the night, 3:30, or when it's raining hard, but having a self-closing airbrick in place, that it will allow the brick to work for you. So the water, when it arrives, will close the airbrick, and it will save you having to get out and fit on the covers. So that is my preferred choice. And they also work when you're out at work or away on holiday. So they're tens of pounds, so it's well worth the investment. There are lots of other sort of ancillary products, for instance, non-return valves, something very well worthwhile putting into the drains to stop the backflow of sewage into your home, as you've seen in other pictures. Failing that, you can get puddles, pan seals and toilet bungs and anti-backflow valves, little ones that you can fit. Puddle sucker is pumps into sumps, so you can get a variety of pumps, but ones that fit in sumps, high volume ones. Remember to put your electric sockets up high so they don't get fused, or invest in a generator, or a puddle sucker which can stand on the floor and pump out to a very low level, as I've said before. Some people and sort of community buildings prefer to keep the water away from their properties, and as a community you can club together to get a few of the varieties I'm going to show you now. There's a rapid dam. Again, this has got a kite mark. And this bungalow had been flooded on several times, some sort of overland runoff. And as you can see, this simple solution had stopped the water and stopped the home from regular flooding. And something very similar to this, you can see in the photograph that the sort of little dam it's made in the river. And it can hold water back away from your home or from a community building or business. And this water gate, the photographs aren't brilliant, but this particular system can be rolled up and kept fitted in the back of an estate car and then stored in your garage. And this home has been saved on many occasions by Watergate. During Storm Desmond, enough water fell from the sky in parts of Cumbria to fill the Albert Hall every minute. So we've seen flood alleviation schemes, even if robust ones, we've seen them being breached, seen walls overtopped, even though they're relatively new. And you can see this one's been hit by quite a large tree, and it's still standing, still robust, still fine, but overtopped. And we can certainly try to keep the water out, as I've shown you, but what if resilience products are overtopped? This, incidentally, is one of my favourite photos, as it shows the Flood Ark system, the property flood resilience system working, but the other side of the picture is failing sandbags. I rest my case. There's a lot we can do, a combined resistance and resilience measures. I won't go into them all here, but do pause the presentation and have a look at this, because there's lots of common sense ideas. Some of them don't have to cost an awful lot more money. And especially when we're thinking about the price tag of a kitchen, people apparently change their kitchens every 7 years. I wish. But if you're at flood risk area, think about the small measures you could take to actually make the kitchen more flood resilient. For instance, putting a dishwasher into drawers rather than standing it on a floor, or having higher legs on the kitchen, because most floods are not terribly deep, and if you had higher legs, the flood water with a bit of luck would go underneath. But do have a look at this because it has lots of suggestions. Then, using technology, resilient materials and plain old-fashioned common sense. Do you remember the green kitchen I told you to remember? Well, this one is it. It has been flooded on quite a few occasions. It's solid pine. Solid wood is flood resilient. It can be wet, sanitised, dried and used again. And this is obviously the homeowner kindly lifted up his carpet, but the sump pump is under there. So if the water does get in, it can be kept to a minimum with a sump pump. And here he's got a piece of furniture that he's got carrier bags covered over the top of bricks, and he's used bricks to lift up the furniture. But also that kind of furniture, if it did flood, doesn't have to be thrown away. It's teak, it can be sanitised and allowed to dry slowly, and it's fine to use again. Too much is thrown away in my book. And resilience doesn't have to look different. I went to see this home in York, and when I arrived I thought, oh crumbs, they haven't done anything. But actually that was the best bit. Nothing smacked me in the face to say flood resilience. It all looked normal. That floor near the stair carpet is ceramic. You'd not know it. All their floors were ceramic in different patterns. It looked like parquet flooring. Stone flooring is pretty normal for the kitchen, and you can see that their kitchen here can be quite easily emptied out and collapsed, in fact, on this occasion. They also kept their sort of flood cupboard above the flood level. They'd got their white goods up on plinths, and they kept all their cleaning items up higher, which they said was easier to deal with when they were getting older, this particular couple. The home here had been flooded on many occasions and got back to normal in a matter of hours, rather than the many, many months that I've mentioned before. After Storm Desmond in 2015, DEFRA set up a round table, and a report was published. It was called the Property Flood Resilience Action Plan. Now I sit on that round table, and it's still going strong in 2020. And we're still looking into what we can do to reduce the impact of a flood. One of the parts of this is I project managed the Cumbria Resilience Showcase project, and you can find out a lot more about that on YouTube. As I interviewed all the people that kindly donated resilience products to make this project work. One of the area properties was Botcherby Community Centre in Carlisle. It was 19 months after the flood when I started the project, so mostly it had been put back, but we did fit flood resilience products to it. And this is an example of the kitchen. The kitchen was still a bare shell, and RTC builders were very kind and donated all their time to make it flood resilient using, in this case, a lime-based plaster. Again, you can look on YouTube and find out all about the materials they used and how they went about doing it. They also painted a stone dry masonry protection onto the outside of the bricks. Now this adds a sort of invisible barrier. It still allows the property to breathe, but just can slow the ingress of water through the bricks. This is the finished kitchen. It was Steel Plan Kitchens donated this to me, to the building, and as you can see, it looks beautiful. It's sort of got a retro feel to it. You can have any colour, and it's sort of powder coat acrylic steel, so it can be washed down and sanitised and used again. And also the other property was an Edenside barn by the Crosby. in Great Crosby, just outside Carlisle, and you can see here the picture of it in the flood in Storm Desmond. The barriers at the home level were in fact overtopped. So we went out of our way to make the home flood resilient, and again all the information is on YouTube. But again, an example of the kitchen. It's beautiful, and it didn't cost much more than my sister's kitchen, and she had a kitchen fitted about the same time, and I was keen to compare prices, and it was a very comparable price. So it's something to think about. This was actually donated to the project from a company in Finland. So do have a look at the YouTube videos if you want more information. And again, look at it was a barn, and the whole thing, all the flood resilience was hidden behind the walls, so it doesn't have to look ugly. The barn carried on looking like a normal barn. And at the end of the day, I was incredibly pleased with the way it looked. And here's some examples of real homes that have been flooded. And again, here you can see the home in York was flooded. It was flooded in 2000, and the price tag for the first time it was flooded in 2000. The price tag was £80,000. This was a picture taken in during Storm Desmond. And this is the same kitchen in use today. It could be sanitised, and in fact the homeowner used tea tree oil to sanitise the kitchen. And it was a solid wood kitchen and stone flooring, which had got waterproof adhesive and grout. And it could be washed down, sanitised, dried, and she moved back in very, very quickly. So here's a list of the things she did. She painted the pine skirting boards and vanished the solid pine doors. The walls were finished with Isle waterproof plaster and solid pine kitchen cabinets. The French doors were an oak-clad type, the sort of steel doors that can be painted and washed down and not worried about. She had non-return valve fitted to the outlet from the ground floor toilet, door barriers, and on this occasion she used the government 5k grant to purchase industrial strength dehumidifiers. The homeowner said, and I endorse this, that the quickest way to recover from a flood is to start drying as soon as possible. Get the wet out and start the drying process. The sooner you can do that, the sooner you get home. And she said this all proved worthwhile, as when the third flood occurred in 2015, the cost was a minor repairs came to less than £5,000. So that's nothing compared to the cost after the 2000 floods. Again, another resilient adapted home in York. You can see here again the flood water in 2015 and the kitchen when I went to take the photographs after the flood, all dried and back to normal. I have to say it's not a picnic, but it's a heck of a lot better than having to be out of your home for so long. She's got freestanding solid wood kitchens, so they can be emptied. They're quite heavy to carry out, but if you've got the time to do it and got the resources to lift them upstairs. The floors are either in stone or solid wood with closed cell insulation underneath. Closed cell insulation is sort of relatively waterproof, far better than the kind of insulation that falls to the floor the minute the flood water touches it. And all the service points are raised above flood level, and all the walls are finished in lime plaster, which had already survived the 20 floods before, and they just needed washing down. And the flood, and they've got a flood wall in the garden that all the neighbours clubbed together to get using the grants, and they put flood barriers individually into the flood walls, and that helped the water, stop the water getting into the property. They've got some pumps installed in the rooms, and additional freestanding pumps which they purchased as a backup. The bricks were painted externally, as I've mentioned before, to inhibit the ingress of water, and they've got non-return valves and door barriers. Now, for further examples of of case studies, look in the Homeowner's Guide to Flood Resilience. It's got a wealth of information there. It's on the knowyourfloodrisk.co.uk website. Lots of inspiring case studies and all the information you need about products that you could purchase. Also, this little guide that I've put together with working on a DEFRA funded project, which will give you ideas of what you can do to your kitchen to make it more flood resilient. And the sister guide to the Homeowner's Guide to Flood Resilience, again, is on the knowyourfloodrisk.co.uk website, and it's especially for businesses. So the two documents sit side by side. Well, thank you for listening, and I hope you found what I've said useful. And those beautiful swans, exquisite, aren't they? But not so nice when they're looking in your sitting room window. Do take care, stay safe, and I hope this has helped you. Thank you.